People both love and hate this card, the HD 5450. It exists solely to play back media, and even then can play some older titles when it was released. But for some reason we decided to do this. This right here is two Radeon HD 5450s which came bundled with my R5 240. Why someone had two of them, I really don't know. The HD 5450 itself is based on the Terascale 2 architecture, using the CDAR Pro architecture variant. With a core clock speed of 650 MHz as well as 1GB of DDR3 memory, it's pretty good and has the memory clocked in at an effective 800 MHz. It has roughly 80 shaders and consumed 19 watts, as well as supporting APIs such as DirectX 11, but most importantly the reason for this video. You can actually run these things in Crossfire. I don't even know why you'd want to though. Now we need to modify our cards to actually work in my PC, as they're half-light ones, so getting out the cup of tea and some tools, we need to remove the PCI bracket, which if anything is already too much effort for what we're trying to achieve here, even though this is the first kind of thing that's ever seemed to have been done on the internet. Now this is one reason why I actually like AMD's Crossfire. Sure, it's not practical, but all of their cards can be crossfired, even if the cards aren't for gaming and just designed for getting the job done. I mean, there is no support for this card in terms of gaming, and I don't think anyone ever went to the store thinking, oh boy, I can't wait to get my HD 5450 Crossfire setup finished. Needless to say, this card was the cheapest card AMD offered in the Radeon HD 5000 series, and allowed virtually anyone to use Eyefinity, which essentially just makes all your monitors appear as one monitor, which allowed for some great productivity uses. Its main use though was hardware acceleration, which helped out in videos and playback and that kind of thing, but for gaming it doesn't really have much point. I mean, older games did run on it and reviewers said it would, but then again, reviewers didn't really test it much in newer or older games in most of the results. And it was around here we ran into the next hurdle, and I began to contemplate how much of my time had actually been spent trying to get this already. Now these HD 5450s needed a special VGA breakaway cable, which luckily I had one to hand and they only cost 99p if you order one from China, so yeah, these are cheap in the first place. So that seems to be the cards in a fully working order, and I'm not quite sure I approve of how bootleg and possibly the worst Crossfire setup this is, but I finished off the rest of my tea, still contemplating about if this would even work, yet alone how it would even work. I then left the cards to magically appear in my system, which they did now. And as you can see, this looks absolutely awful. What was genuinely my nicest PC to date, not to give away too many spoilers for an upcoming episode, had not one but two HD 5450s in place, connected in the back with this rather loose and ill-fitting VGA cable. But flicking on the Crossfire switch, it's time to test it out in some games. So, to start off with, we have GTA 5, which was running at 31 FPS, but seemed more like it was running at 24 FPS. Still, way better than a single HD 5450. The game did have some fairly awful frame times though, that's mainly why it seemed like 24 FPS to be honest, and Crossfire was enabled because we got this lovely little watermark in the top right hand corner to make sure both cards are active. But yep, it seemed playable and there was low latency in terms of input lag. It didn't look great either, but for a HD 5450 it ran way better than expected, if you can ignore those frame times. CSGO with low settings in 720p suffered with the same issues as GTA 5 with the frame times. Even with low settings in 720p, we did see a somewhat playable experience though. However, the 1% lows down to 12 FPS and 0.1% lows down to 7 FPS could be fairly prominent at times and could lead to a rather bad experience for a competitive game. And I mean, it is playable though. I mean, for a HD 5450 we're talking about, it's better than I thought it would be. Just Cause 2 was a surprise. I mean, with low settings in 720p, the game did look alright, and it was playable with a 49 FPS average. And the frame times were better too, and the experience was altogether genuinely better than I thought a HD 5450 could ever manage, regardless of the Crossfire. Sure, it wasn't the best experience I've ever seen, because this game can run at 60 FPS on any modern PC, but it beat the 30 FPS you get on console. Next up, a game from 2015 with Mad Max with the low settings enabled in 480p, and the frame times weren't great yet again, but I think that's beginning to become a thing with open world games that are past 2014 with their release dates. But the average of 38 FPS did seem pretty playable for the most part, but the game could slow down when you were going into some heavy scenes. But this game is extremely optimised for what it's worth, and I'd get away with playing it on this machine. Another surprise was also Skyrim, which ran at a pleasant 44 FPS average even when we were in towns and cities. Doesn't even matter if we were venturing around. I mean, it could stutter momentarily, which is to be expected with Crossfire, but the performance was actually around the level of a last-gen console, which isn't bad at all. And hey, it beat Fallout 4 on this PC, which just crashed instantly. 2D games like RimWorld for some reason said they supported Crossfire, and I don't really know how, but it was way more than playable as to be expected on a PC, even while running in 1080p. But then again, one card is bound to be way more than enough for this game. Another 1080p game here with Minecraft running with Optifine and the fancy option selected, all while 8 chunks were also being used. It did stutter in loading in the game and new chunks, but for the most part we managed to get a perfect 61 FPS average during our time playing, which as you can see was buttery smooth, even if the game is only Minecraft. And finally, the worst experience we had with this. The forest with low settings in 480p, and the input lag was horrible, the performance was dire, and it looked equally as bad to match. But hey, this is with 2 cards, so I'd imagine it'd be even worse with just 1. And that's all I had to test. I mean, most newer games like Prey or Fallout 4 will crash upon startup, leaving you with very few options in terms of modern day usability. So, was this a good idea? No, it wasn't. Was this a bad idea? Well, no, it wasn't either. I'm honestly amazed at it. I mean, AMD's cut back support on Crossfire, so it's clear to see why some people were annoyed. But it is actually quite fun to play around with, and it's cheap if you do need a bit of an extra kick in your system. But in the end, do I recommend you go out and grab 2 HD 5450s? No, it's not practical, it's a pain to set up. You'll contemplate your life while doing it, and driver support ended just over a year ago. So no, I don't recommend you do that. But if you want to Crossfire 2 cards for a bit of fun on the cheap, why not? It actually worked quite well, and it was just fun to see if it worked. So thank you very much for watching, good night! So this was a very spontaneous video and ended up being pretty surprising with the performance and what it could actually do. Don't forget you can always catch us over on Discord as we're quite active over there, and you can like and subscribe for more content like this.